Hello and welcome to Run Testers. My name's Nick, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the Asics Magic Speed 3 and the Puma Deviate Nitro 2. So the Magic Speed 3 and the Deviate Nitro 2 are both super trainers. I think it's fair to say they're both among the better super trainers out there, with lightweight, fast designs with plates that work well, either as a training partner shoe for a full carbon racer or to use as a racing shoe themselves. The Magic Speed 3 cost £160 in the UK, $160 in the US. The Deviate Nitro 2 is $160 in the US as well, but it's £145 in the UK, so a little cheaper. The Magic Speed 3 is the lighter shoe. It's 221 grams or 7.8 ounces in a UK 9, whereas the Puma Deviate Nitro 2 is 276 grams or 9.7 ounces in a UK 9. Magic Speed has a 7mm drop, and the Deviate Nitro 2 has an 8mm drop with a stack height of 38mm at the heel and 30 at the forefoot. Magic Speed 3 in the men's shoe is 36mm at the heel and 29mm at the forefoot, and in the women's shoe both those measurements drop a millimetre, so it's 35mm at the heel and 28 at the forefoot. Looking at designs, you've got a mesh upper on the Puma with a fair amount of padding at the back there and some power tape additions to add a bit of structure to the upper. The midsole is a dual density midsole with a top layer of Puma's Nitro Elite foam. That's nitrogen infused PBAX on top of the Nitro foam, which is nitrogen infused TPEE. You've got the power plate running through that, which is 70% carbon, 30% TPU. Then you've got a Puma Grip outsole with Puma Grip ATR at the back. It's a thick outsole with plenty of coverage there in the key areas, and it offers really good grip. Asics Magic Speed 2 has a very lightweight upper. It's a motion wrap upper, the same as on the Metaspeed series of racing shoes. A little bit of padding at the back, but in general the whole upper is designed to keep things nice and light. Then you have an FF Blast Plus midsole. There's two layers of foam, but they're both FF Blast Plus with a carbon plate running through it, which you can see on the bottom thanks to that cutout. Then you have got reasonable outsole coverage again, though it's a much thinner and in general more lightweight outsole than the Puma, with cutouts wherever they can to save weight, and you've certainly got a little less coverage at the heel in particular than on the Puma. When it comes to the fit, I have a UK 9 for both shoes, which is a US 10. That's my normal UK size for both brands, and the fit's been pretty good in both of them. The Puma Deviate Nitro 2, I've got no concerns about the fit at all. Has a good comfortable hold at the heel and midfoot with enough room in the toe box. None of the heel rub issues that were present with the first edition of the Deviate Nitro. The Magic Speed 3 has a tighter, more racy fit. It's a little bit tighter around the toes, and if you were to get an Asics shoe of the same size from the more relaxed training range, something like the Gel Nimbus, it would have more room in the toes, but it's a bit more cramped in the Magic Speed to give you that racier feel. But I had no real concerns about it. It's a comfortable upper, good hold at the heel and midfoot again. I'd say neither of them are the widest shoes in the world, but I have quite a narrow foot. It doesn't really bother me, but the Asics in particular is quite torpedo-like, so that would be something to look out for. So I've done a lot of running in both of these shoes, and I am a fan of both of them. The Puma Deviate Nitro 2 was the one that I tested first. It's a real all-rounder of a shoe. You've got more padded upper than on the Asics and more outsole, which does make it a little bit more suitable for using day in, day out for a variety of training runs. And you've also got a slightly higher midsole as well with, I'd say, a less aggressive geometry. You haven't got quite such an aggressive forefoot rocker in particular that you do have on the Asics. You can still move nice and fast in the Puma Deviate Nitro 2 though, and I've used it for a variety of fast training runs, from all-out track reps of short distances to longer hard tempo runs, like a hard hour I remember doing in the shoe and really bouncing through it very happily, because although it doesn't have the flashiest ride, it's a little bit flatter than a lot of the super shoes, less bouncy despite the impressive foams in there. It does deliver really whenever you ask it to run fast. It helps to preserve your energy, roll through efficiently, and just keep pushing on those long hard runs, or really get up on your toes and sprint on shorter reps. So overall it's the kind of shoe that you learn to love over time. Like when you first step into it, it doesn't necessarily feel amazing or that fast or that impressive all round, but you can use it again and again and again for lots of different runs, and it keeps delivering a high level of performance, and then you really start to love it over time as a result, which is obviously what you want in a training shoe you're going to use a lot. Whereas the Magic Speed 3 feels much more like a racing shoe. It really, when you pull it on, it feels very light. You've got an aggressive forefoot rocker. You feel a bit more grounded, and it certainly just feels very quick indeed. You've got that nimble feeling because of the light weight, and although the stack height isn't that different, it does feel a little bit more grounded and direct than the Puma. It's got much more of a roll-through ride than the Puma, which like I say, has quite a bit more snap to it, or quite a flat feeling, whereas with the Asics you do get a noticeable rocker as you go through, and that helps to really deliver the speed across the same kind of runs I talked about with the Puma there. It's very good, obviously, for short stuff because it is so light and nimble, but it can protect the legs and help you roll through long, hard tempo runs or marathon-paced sessions, that kind of thing, really very well. I've also raced in the Magic Speed 3 because it does feel so much like a full racing shoe. I did a 5k park run in it, and yeah, it really does deliver a performance very close to the level of a full-blooded carbon shoe for that kind of thing, especially over shorter events, because all the ingredients are there except for the foam, which is not Asics' best foam. This FF Blast Plus is not quite as exciting and bouncy as the FF Turbo foam that Asics has, and if you're running in the Meta Speed and then the Magic Speed, you will notice that difference, but actually using the shoe by itself, that foam feels pretty good. It's more bouncy than you might think, given that's the foam that's used across the Asics range on much more relaxed training shoes as well, and when paired with the carbon plate and the aggressive geometry of the shoe, it does deliver a really fast ride. Compared to previous models of the shoe, and indeed the Puma, you lose a little bit of versatility because it obviously doesn't have as extensive an outsole. It's much thinner. The upper is obviously a bit more racy and built for those fast sessions, but at the same time, I do quite like just mooching around in the Magic Speed 3, as I did enjoy the Magic Speed 2 as well. Like I said, the foam is just quite balanced and works for a few different things. You've got that aggressive geometry, and you might find that you're running your easy or steady runs a little bit quicker than you probably should, but it's a comfortable shoe for sure, and if you're not going to be straying onto light trails or anything like that, you're not going to mess up the outsole too much. So if you're just on pavements, I do think it works quite well as a general shoe. When I was running in both at the same time, it was certainly noticeable that the Asics feels a little bit smoother, a little bit softer at the back as well, I'd say. The Puma has a flatter ride and kind of just feels okay, but the Asics feels really good. It's the kind of thing where if you pulled on both shoes for one run or use them side by side, you think, oh, the Asics is a much more exciting, better shoe. It's a lighter shoe, it's a faster shoe, it feels great. But like I say, over time, as you use both shoes, the merits of the Puma really come into play because it is still comfortable, it still feels good, and it almost feels better the longer into runs you get, and it always delivers. It's a really practical shoe in that sense, and you can use it for all those speed sessions. Magic Speed does a lot of great things as well, and it feels great when you first pull it on, but I do think over time, the extra benefits you get from the Puma do start to tell if you're using it more as a training shoe for sure. So verdict, I think these are almost two slightly different kinds of super trainers. They both work as training partners, but with the Magic Speed, it's a training partner shoe in the sense that I think you'd use it for the same reasons that you use your carbon plate racing shoe. So if you did have the Asics racing shoe or any others, you could use the Magic Speed for all your speed sessions and then maybe some races that you're not so fussed about. Like when I went and did a park run in this shoe, I wasn't fully fit, it was very wet. I wanted to go and run a hard run out, but I wouldn't necessarily use my main carbon racing shoe if I only had one in my rotation. Magic Speed 3 certainly fits the bill as a shoe that will step in there and do your speed sessions and your races, or it also works just as a cheaper carbon plate racing shoe compared to things like the Metaspeed Sky series. If you do want a carbon racer, you don't want to spend over £200, Magic Speed is a really good option. It is a fast racing shoe that works at a nice range of distances. Then the Puma is a training partner in a slightly different way in that it eats up all of your training miles pretty much, and then you could have your racing shoe for race day, and maybe you'd use your racing shoe occasionally for the odd speed session, because the Puma isn't quite as light and aggressive as a full carbon shoe or the Magic Speed 3. It does all your speed sessions really well in my experience, but I still would swap from this to a racing shoe if I was going to go all out, even at just a fairly relaxed race, whereas the Magic Speed 3 I think has a little bit more chops when it comes to the high-end pace side of things, the racing side of things, than the Puma. And then the Puma obviously has the edge when it comes to just general use, practicality, better outsole, more rugged and padded upper. It does really break down like that for me. Like the Magic Speed 3 is not a bad shoe, I think, to use for a bit of everything as an all-rounder, but you've got to be on the right surface, you've got to enjoy the slightly more aggressive feeling of it for even really quite chilled runs, whereas the Puma does have that balanced traditional training shoe feel, but then it does have a lot of pace if you do start using it for your speedier sessions. Then another big difference that actually ends up being the case in practice is price. Obviously they're quite similarly priced on RRP, but the Deviate Nitro 2 is one of those shoes that is always in sales. I think last time I checked earlier today, it was about 80 quid for lots of different colorways, and things like that just make it even more attractive proposition, because if you are looking for a training partner shoe, it does everything really well. It's nearly always in sales. There's a nice range of colors, pretty good looking shoe as well, and I'd probably say that's the one I'd go and pick up. If you are looking for an alternative to a full carbon racing shoe, or really want a very fast shoe to add to your lineup as your training partner, super trainer, then the Magic Speed 3 is a faster shoe, slightly more exciting shoe to use as well than the Puma, but yeah, the trade-off there is versatility and maybe comfort over those longer, easy runs. So yeah, overall, both are really good shoes. I hope they're the kind of shoes that will end up in sales as well. The Asics, I know the Puma is, but hopefully the Asics ends up dropping near £100 as well, and then you've got a really nice, lightweight, fast shoe that you can use for a variety of purposes. But overall, in practicality, the Puma probably wins the day if you're looking at these as super trainers that you want to do a nice chunk of training in. That's our comparison of the Magic Speed 3 and the Puma Deviate Nitro 2. Let us know what you think of both shoes in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.